Welcome into Talkin' Ducks. I am Aaron Fentress. I'm filling in for Jordan Kent, who is out doing his side gig calling basketball games. However, we will have him on to talk about the state of affairs regarding Oregon men's and women's basketball. Plus, of course, I will be joined by Joey Harrington and Anthony Newman to talk Oregon football. Specifically, we'll get into second-year expectations for both Dan Lanning and Bo Nix. And also, I will have a special guest join us as well. Time for our opening tip, brought to you by Les Schwab Tire Centers. We're going to go to Jordan Kent. My man, Jordan, rough week for the Oregon basketball program. The men, after beating Arizona, basically lit that victory on fire by losing at Stanford, and the women's team drops out of the top 25 for the first time this season after losing in Corvallis. Jordan, what do you make of what's going on with the hoops teams in Eugene?
Well, thanks again, Aaron, for filling in. I appreciate it. On the road here, getting set for the call of UNLV in Wyoming. But looking back at Oregon's weekend, another inconsistent weekend. And we had talked about this. This is a team that had Jekyll and Hyde types of games where you'll go and get demolished by Colorado, but then beat a very good Utah team. Or have Arizona State beat you by double digits, but then beat number 9 Arizona. So you felt like this week, this is the week that they were going to turn it around. You felt like they finally got on rhythm. They beat Cal. They put together back-to-back wins. And then you lose to last place Stanford. And for Oregon, this all but dashes their hopes for an at-large bid in the NCAA tournament, which is disappointing at this point in the season. But then you just go back to the defense here. Oregon giving up 50% shooting on the field to a Stanford team that had been struggling to score the ball during the season. That's not going to cut it. And then for the Ducks, this is one of Dana Altman's, unfortunately, poorest three-point shooting teams he's had in a while. And in this game, Oregon shot more threes than they did twos. And I don't think that's the type of basketball that's necessarily going to be the best fit for this team. And so when you've got this Oregon team unable to generate stops that lead to easy scoring opportunities, it forces them to really work in the half court where we saw them shoot a lot of those threes. So it's definitely disappointing for this Oregon team that has been riddled by injuries all season long. And now it feels like your primary concern is just getting bodies back on the court so that you can hopefully make a run for it and win the win the Pac-12 tournament. The good news, if there is any hope for this team here, you have shown that you can beat Arizona. You have shown that you can play with UCLA. So I think when Oregon's playing their best and they're healthy, it's not out of the question. But for the Ducks, you really want to fight and scrap and make sure you at least have the shortest route possible to that championship game in March at the Pac-12 tournament, rather than trying to win 4 games in 4 days. But for more on this weekend, let's go ahead and hear from Dana Altman, get his thoughts afterwards.
Obviously, I'm disappointed with the inconsistency that we've shown. There's no excuse for it now. Early in the year, I could have given them an excuse for it, but now there's none, and we're still inconsistent. So we've got to just keep grinding. We've got a third of our schedule left, and we've got to get better. We've got to grind it out.
So Oregon will get set to host the Mountain Schools, which again, that is going to be a tough homestand for the Ducks, but we'll see if they can finally start to get some consistency rolling. On the women's side, now they've dropped 3 out of their last 4 games after losing to Oregon State. They've fallen out of the top 25 for the first time this season. And really, it comes down to the offense. This Oregon team is just not shooting the ball as well as it normally can. And Kelly Graves had talked about how much he enjoyed this team on the offensive end. And they'll find their rhythm offensively. Sometimes you just go through stretches where the ball doesn't go through the hoop. They are 13-5. 4 of those losses coming in Pac-12 play, and a lot of them are coming in these 1 or 2 possession games down the stretch. And as a coach, when you look at that, I'm sure there's just a couple of adjustments here or there, but I think the biggest thing for the women is you got to start building leads at halftime. These are games where Oregon's trying to come from behind from 8, 10, 12 points late in the second half to try and make it a game. They need to get out to a little bit better start so they can put some pressure on the opposing teams. But the good news for the Oregon women's team, they are still listed as an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. And I feel, once again, this is a team that if they can get their three-point shooting clicking again, they can find a way to really tighten up the defense, especially in the first half, and not have to rely on making second half adjustments and start playing with a lead and putting pressure on the other teams. I think they can right the ship in time. I think there's obviously a couple of tweaks there for Kelly Graves, but this is a man that has had to deal with tweaks before. All right, Aaron, I'm going to send it back to you. Best of luck hosting with the rest of these guys. Miss y'all. I'll see you when I get back in town here soon.
All right, thanks, Jordan. We'll look forward to having you back on set next week as we dive into recruiting. Signing days coming up. But up next, I'm going to be joined by Anthony and Joey. And we're going to talk about Dan Lanning's second season coming up. What must he do to meet expectations?
You're watching Talkin' Ducks, built by Par Lumber.
Welcome back, and now we are joined by the legendary quarterback and salt of the earth, fantastic human being, Joey Harrington, as well as Anthony Newman, for our next segment. Sorry about that, Anthony. I had to get you. Let's jump right into the legendary moment, brought to you by Abby's Legendary Pizza. Guys, Dan Lanning, second season with the Ducks coming up. We're going to talk about what we think the expectations should be. But first, let's talk about the second season for some recent coaches, right? Some pretty good performances in their second season. Chip Kelly goes to a national championship game. Mario Cristobal won a Rose Bowl. Between that, Mark Helfrich went to a national championship game. So what should be expected of one Dan Lanning? We'll start with you, Anthony, since I dissed you.
Well, yeah, you really did. I mean, but hey, that's all right. What goes around comes around. I'll remember that. No, but
Anthony's
think about
collecting
this.
receipts. I mean, we all know that. Let's be honest.
I still love you, Aaron. Okay, we'll see. Joey, I think you may agree with me on this. And if you think about Dan Lanning going into a second year, I think it's going to be a lot easier. Coming into that first year, it was difficult because realistically, think about it. He was never on the West Coast. Chip Kelly was under Mike Bellotti. Mark Helfrich was here for a while. Mario Cristobal was here before he became the head coach. Dan Lanning came in just, like, hey, this is all brand new. Brought a whole new coaching staff. All these guys are brand new. And new players they have to deal with in the transfer portal that you had to deal with. So I think it was a lot harder for Dan in his first year. The second year, he now understands what's going on. He understands. He put into a culture that kids understand. And the coaches, they know how he's, as a head coach, what he wants, what's he trying to achieve. So I think, he's going to do well this year. I really do. He has some players. He's got a coaching staff. He understands what he's dealing with in the Pac-12. It's going to be a fun year.
Joey?
Did Anthony actually give us an answer there, or was that like typical score avoidance? Look, Dan Lanning has a Heisman Trophy quarterback, or a Heisman Trophy contender coming back at quarterback. I mean, let's call a spade here. Had he been starting over from scratch and had to develop, say, Ty Thompson or some freshman coming in, I think he would have had more realistic expectations. But the fact of the matter is, he has the leader of this team coming back. And in a season where they were, for a moment, talked about in the college football playoff conversation, and for the majority of the season were in the running to play in the conference championship, I don't think the expectations should or could be anything less than a Pac-12 conference championship. But I don't think that's anything new for Oregon, right? Every season you come in, if it's not national championship type season, and Aaron, you can you can give the realistic perspective about when Oregon should not be thinking of a national championship season. It's always competing for and winning a Pac-12 championship. And especially with Bo coming back this year and the cast of guys he has around him, I don't think the expectations can be anything less than that.
Wow. Okay. I think expectations is a strong word for a Pac-12 title because this conference is stacked. They're loaded so many good teams. I don't even think there's a chance in heck that a team's going to come out of this conference next season at 12-1 and go to the playoffs. I just don't see it happening because there's just too many good quarterbacks, too many good teams. So I'm not going to put that expectation on them. I think the expectation is win around 10 again, see what happens with how that shakes out within the conference, but keep building your program. I always give coaches the benefit of the doubt. Regardless of what you inherit, you have to give them a chance to build things the way they want to see them work. So I'm going to give him a couple more years before I say, okay, you need to win the conference title. I also think it's unfair to compare him to the past situations. Chip, what Chip did was pretty impressive because Chip lost his quarterback, Masoli, to a controversy. Then he lost his star running back to the punch in Boise and somehow won the conference. So that was pretty impressive. Helfrich inherited the greatest player of all time, whom he recruited in Mariota, but still a program that was rolling. And then Mario had to sort of continue to rebuild that Taggart started, but he did inherit some really good talent, including a marquee quarterback. So what Chip did was probably the most impressive. I'm not going to hold Lanning to that standard of winning the conference or a Rose Bowl or going to the national playoffs in his second season. Win around 9 or 10 games and continue building your program as you see it fit.
Okay, but I got to ask this question, though. I understand the idea, like, is a national championship a realistic expectation for every team?
No,
absolutely not. But do you think that USC ever comes into a season saying that I don't think we could or should win the conference this year, right? And more so, maybe I'd ask you this question. If Oregon only won 9 or 10 games, do you think Lanning, the players and or the fans would be happy with that?
Well, okay, my thing is there's a difference between hoping, wanting, and expecting.
Right.
Expecting means, oh, we're going to win the conference title. I expect to win it. And then when you don't, everyone's like, someone needs to be blamed, heads need to roll, et cetera, et cetera. As opposed to, hey, we hope to contend for this and win it, and you try your best to win it. And if you don't win it, you understand that you face some good competition, you just didn't get it done, and you move forward with the continuing to build the program as Lanning's
right.
how he sort of views it evolving, right? So that's why I'm saying whenever we say expectations, then when something doesn't happen, the sky's falling. And I like to avoid that word unless 2014, I expected the Ducks to go to the national championship game, and they did. Had they not, that would have been, to me, a bad season. Next season for the Ducks, if they don't win the Pac-12, it's a good conference.
So I guess here's maybe the point of clarification. If they don't win the conference, which, and I would agree with this statement as well, Dan Lanning's job is safe. Nobody's getting fired. Like, this isn't a sky is falling situation. But
no.
Does Oregon, in your opinion, have enough talent to win the conference next year?
I need to see the defense. I need to see a defense ranked better than 70th. If I see a defense in the top 30, yes, because I think offensively they're going to be just fine. Because, like you just said, they're bringing back Bo Nix, right? But I need to see a better defense because this conference is going to be stacked with quarterbacks who are going to be able to put up numbers. If you go out there with a mediocre defense, you're going to give up points. And if you're giving up points, you got a chance to lose a couple of games. So I need to see the defense first.
Fair
Aaron,
point.
I agree. You're right.
What? Wait, hold up.
Yeah. Just the defense needs to get better. They're getting better, but they need to get a lot better.
All right, guys, we beat that topic to death. We're going to come back and beat another one to death. This one, Bo Nix entering year 2. What could he do to improve as a quarterback for his second season at Oregon?
You're watching Talkin' Ducks, built by Par Lumber.
Welcome back to Talkin' Ducks. Now it's time for Talkin' Numbers, brought to you by Par Lumber. All right, gentlemen, Bo Nix, we mentioned him earlier, is also back for his second season, just like Dan Lanning, and he is carrying some lofty expectations. Check out these Heisman odds. He's tied for third with Michael Penix Jr. for the, best odds to win the Heisman next year behind Caleb Williams and Drake May. I do want to add one topic later about why it's always got to be quarterbacks. We'll talk about that, Newman, so we can talk bad about Joey. But anyway, gentlemen, how do you feel about, one, the expectations being placed on Bo here and his chances of actually maybe ending up at least in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony?
Okay, well, number one, I'm going to agree with both of what I'm assuming you're both going to say, which is that this is not a quarterback award. I completely agree with that. This is the most outstanding player in college football. There need to be more Charles Woodsons. There need to be more Julius Peppers. There need to be more, heck, we'll just talk about other position players, whether it's running backs and Mark Ingram or wide receivers. This is a Orlando Pace. You got to get these guys involved with the award, or else it's just going to turn into I'm already going off. I'm going off on a tangent. Okay, anyway, how do I feel about the expectations? I like it, to be perfectly honest, and I agree with it. Because when Bo was healthy, I don't know that there were too many quarterbacks in college football last year who were better than him. That stretch that he had from week 3 until week 10 till his injury, I mean, was as good as anybody in college football. The reason that he wasn't part of the discussion is because everybody saw the game against Georgia and automatically just wiped everything out of their memory, or wiped Bo out of contention because of that. But the fact that, I mean, and this kind of goes to what I was saying a minute ago, the fact that Bo is being considered right now means that he's already on people's radar. He's already, he's already being thought of in that capacity. And so that makes the chances of him getting to New York that much greater. The next logical question is going to be, how does he deal with the pressure? And all I have to do is look at how he went, what he dealt with at Auburn, and how he transitioned to Oregon, and how he embraced the team and embraced the move, and frankly came back again to play this year. He came back knowing what the expectations would be. So if there's anybody in college football who can deal with this type of pressure, it's a guy who was expected to be the chosen one at Auburn, got run out of town, had an incredible season entirely across the country, and came back knowing what those expectations would be. And frankly, I mean, has played 5 years of college football. So I think Bo's going to be in a pretty good position to be able to, one, deal with the expectations, and two, end up in New York should things go the way I think we all want them to.
So Anthony, one, how do you feel about the expectations? And two, is there any danger of any slippage given that he lost his offensive coordinator? There definitely was a good relationship there between Nix and Dillingham.
Well, yeah, you're right with Dillingham and Bo. I mean, they had that connection, and Joey knows that, having an offensive coordinator in your back pocket. But I look at it from a defensive standpoint, that when you face a guy like Bo Nix, and we're talking about strictly Bo Nix right here, he is a nightmare to deal with. Okay, because when you have like a great running back and you got to stop the running back, well, you can do a lot of things to stop that running back. You can put 9 guys in the box if you have to, 10 guys in the box if you have to, let one receiver go by himself. Is a top receiver and you're trying to stop this top receiver, we can double team that guy. With a quarterback who touches the ball every offensive snap, it is chaos for my defense. Because now I have to adjust for one guy who touches the ball every snap and trying to deal with him. If Bo Nix plays like he did last year, yes, I believe he should be in the Heisman running. I mean, I should believe he should be in New York. Why not? But let's not forget the supporting cast, the offensive line that he had last year. Wow, unbelievable. The running backs, he had 2 of them that we knew nothing about before the season started. And the receiver core who stepped up and played outstanding. So it comes with not only coaching, as offensive coordinator, but that supporting cast. Is it going to be the same supporting cast from last year? The offensive line, you lose a couple of guys. The running backs, they all come back. The top receivers, they all come back. We'll see what happens. But playing against Bo Nix, you better bring your lunch that game.
Hey, let me answer that question right there. Yeah, you lost a couple offensive linemen, but you're bringing back 5 of your top 7 receivers. That includes that were all sophomores. Like you said, both running backs, tight end, wide receiver. Yeah, those guys are coming back, and they were all sophomores. I mean, this is set. Hey, let's just put it like this. I would love to come back for a senior season with a couple offensive linemen and all of my skill position players.
I laughed earlier when Newman said you had Tedford in your back pocket, because it made it sound like you were calling the plays instead of Tedford. Anyway, let's start with you on this one, Joey. What can Bo Nix do to improve? Where does he need some work in your estimation?
Wow. That's a really tough question, honestly, because, what we talked about at the beginning of last season was this idea of good Bo and bad Bo, right? That was his reputation coming out of Auburn, was he'd be really, really good or he'd be really, really bad. We saw really bad in week 1. We got it. We understood why, because he's playing the eventual national champions. For the next 8 weeks, we saw really, really, really good Bo. And without sounding like someone who is just nitpicking, I don't know that there's much to improve on.
Yeah, leave the nitpicking to me. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, what? Don't get hurt.
I got some nitpicking.
Stay healthy. When you come back for your bowl game after being out for a couple weeks, maybe play a little more consistent in the first half. Like I don't know. Like there was a stretch there where he was completing dang near 75% of his passes, not turning the ball over, scoring through the air, scoring with his feet. Choosing the right time when to take off and run versus scramble to buy time to find a wide receiver. Like there were very few instances during that major stretch of the season where I could sit down without literally being in the quarterback room and knowing what his exact reads were and find something critical to say of him. So I'll leave that up to the reporter and the expert, Aaron Fentress. Go ahead and be critical.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Can we get that clip right there? I want that clip. So Newman, as a former safety, when you look at Bo Nix, were there any weaknesses in his game that you noticed that you would try and take advantage of schematically?
Well, unlike you as an ex-player, I look at film. I look at game film, and I watch game film, and I study these players. And I don't have game film. I don't have access to game film. I'm not like, you or these other reporters watch some TV footage and talking about, oh, they need to do this better. I can't say what Bo Nix needs to do better. I really don't, because I'm not watching game film. I'm not in the film room, the quarterback room. I just know he's a nightmare because the young man can scramble to run. He can scramble to throw. He can throw on the run. He makes all the right decisions. Like Joey said, don't get hurt. Stay injury free. That's all you can do. That's how you get better.
I have an absolute nitpick. I'm saying it out front. Total nitpick, but I think it's valid. I believe, and I've actually talked to one scout about this, that part of the reason why he's back is because his grade wasn't as high as he probably would have liked. And the area where he needs to work on is his ability to pass from the pocket in any type of circumstance. Hone that skill. Now, if you look at his passer ratings per game throughout Georgia, 3 of his 4 worst passer ratings came after he injured his lower leg. So he was unable to scramble. Now, again, I'm nitpicking because I think he threw 5 touchdowns and 2 picks over those 3 games and completed like 68% of his passes, right? So what are we talking about here? But the last 2 quarters of Oregon State and the first 3 quarters of the bowl game were not very pretty. He had some really interestingly bad passes. So I believe that for him to improve his overall draft stock, he needs to show more consistency in the pocket. Who is he if he can't just run and throw on the run and escape and do the things he did last year? Who is he if he's only getting sacked once or twice the entire season, right? What can he do from the pocket in dire situations, high leverage situations where you can't just run and make something happen? You have to stick in there and throw a dime throw on a comeback, a post corner, a dig or whatever with a drive, a game on the line. So that's my nitpick. I'm sticking to it. I think it's valid, but it is nitpicking.
Okay, Aaron,
yes.
Does an ankle injury affect how you're able to push off and throw the ball from the pocket?
It absolutely can. That's
Okay,
why
okay,
I say I'm
okay,
nitpicking.
okay,
This is
okay,
why I'm saying
stop.
I'm nitpicking. But if you can go play, you can perform. And I do think, like I said, I talked to a scout about this. That's the one thing about him is that they're wondering, who is this guy from the pocket? And you know better than anyone, Joey, in the NFL, doesn't matter how much you can run around. I'm a Bears fan. People are all excited about Justin Fields. Why? Because he rushed for 1,000 yards? That's not how you win a Super Bowl. You win it from the pocket.
So you're saying that his 3 worst passing performances were after he got hurt. That doesn't seem like rocket science.
Passer ratings. Passer ratings. He wasn't even that bad. That's what I'm saying.
I know, but that's my point. It's after he got hurt.
But okay, I know. But he couldn't. He didn't. That took away all of the plays he would make escaping the pocket, which means he had to always make the plays from the pocket. And we saw a dive. Now, could it be because he couldn't have planned it and throw as well? Possibly. Like I said, I'm nitpicking. But I think that's the one area where I would say he needs improvement. And I think the NFL scouts would agree.
This can go on forever.
All right, guys. Dion Primetime Sanders is stacking talent down in Boulder. Should the Ducks and the rest of the Pac-12 be worried? That's coming up next.
You're watching Talkin' Ducks, built by Par Lumber.
Welcome back to Talkin' Ducks. It's time now for What's Cooking, brought to you by Sam's Northwest barbecue. Okay, what seems to be cooking are some Buffalo Wild Wings down in Colorado because Dion Sanders has the grill rolling. He just flipped the top corner in the nation from Mario Cristobal in Miami, by the way. His name is Cormani McClain, and this comes a year after he stole Travis Hunter, the #1 rated QB in the country, from the whole country to go to Jackson State. They're loaded at corner, it looks like, although these are two young kids. I'm sure Newman will tell you how young corners can become susceptible at times. But guys, what do you think about what Dion is doing? Are they going to be a threat? The Ducks open Pac-12 play against Colorado in September. He's got the #4 ranked transfer class in the country, which is something he said he was going to do, is bring in a bunch of transfers. He even threatened the returning guys that they didn't get their act together. They were all going to be replaced, and it looks like they are being replaced rapidly. Is Dion building a contender in his first year at Colorado? Starting with Newman.
I knew you would start with me.
DB recognized DB, so I'm going with you.
Yeah. Well, let's slow down a little bit with Dion in his first year. I mean, you know, when you come to a program, you have to have a foundation still. You got to have some kids that were there that have built that program, and they had trouble with that program. So now Dion added some sprinkles, some top players from here and there, and yeah, but they haven't played together in a while. You got a whole new coaching staff. You're going through that whole system of trying to figure out what's the culture there. As Dion Sanders, he's a guy that it's either his way or the highway. He's that type of guy. Yeah, I'm telling you right now. And so with the coaching staff, there's going to be a rude awakening in how he coaches with other coaches, because he's always involved, and it's his way or the highway. There's a lot of yelling going on during his meetings and practice. The kids got to understand. I like what he's trying to achieve there. He wants kids to respect the program, respect all kinds of things. Women that are part of the program, respect each other, respect the school, all this kind of stuff. I like all this. But playing football, when you're getting everybody on the field, that's another story. And playing it well and doing well. In time, yes, he may turn this thing around, but not in one season.
Julie, what do you think? Is this all just pomp and circumstance and pizzazz and misdirection, or is Dion building something pretty special down there?
I think he's building something. And here's why I say that. Do I think he's going to put together an 11-win season next year? No. I think that when he brought some of that talent to Jackson State in a league where they could then they were the most talented football team out there, and they won a lot of games because of it. He's coming into a league like we've talked about with Washington, that's fantastic. With Oregon State, that's going to be tremendous. USC, that's going to be fantastic again. Oregon, there is a lot of talent in this league. That being said, he is bringing more than just talent to Colorado. He's bringing an attitude. He's bringing a way of doing things. And Anthony, I know that you know that a lot of times it's not necessarily who your head coach is, or your head coach isn't always relied upon to do the little things at every position. Dion seems to be a great motivator, a great leader, a great connector, right? The head coach's job is to get people to buy in. It's the assistant coach's job, it's the coordinator's job to then take that talent and put out a product. I think he's really building something because of the way he's getting people to buy in. That's special. That takes something, that takes the it factor, and he's got it. I think that this is probably I'll say an 8-win team next year. For some of the reasons you said, Anthony, you got to figure out you're gonna have some bumps, but I'd watch out the following year. And who knows? Maybe they get hot. Maybe they put a streak together at the end of this year. But this is a significantly more talented and immediately more talented roster, led by somebody who has this team all on the same page and is as good a motivator as I've seen in a long time. So I would not put it past Colorado being up there at the top, if not by the end of this next year, 2024 for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that part of it. 2024. I think next year they're going to be better. I mean, how could you not be? The team wasn't very good this year. But, adding a freshman corner, he's still a freshman corner. Travis Hunter, they're going to give him a nice talented duo. Both might be in the NFL in a couple years, but they're going to be young. And they're going to be young corners in a conference loaded with quarterbacks. Now, they're going to have their own quarterback who looks like a pretty special talent in George Sanders, Dion's son. But are you going to have the receivers? Are you going to have the offensive line? Are you going to have the front seven, which we know was really bad last season? I don't think you're going to have enough to win even 8. I'm thinking maybe 6 or 7. Like I look at their schedule, they're at TCU to start. That's an L. You got SC, you got Oregon, you got UCLA, Oregon State, Utah. Those are going to be really tough games to somehow go from one of the worst teams in the conference to being able to beat 3 or 4 of those teams to win 8 or 9 games. You didn't say 9, you said 8, but I'm going to say 6 or 7 wins in his first year. But watch out for year 2, right? Because he's going to get another wave of recruits, another wave of transfers, and that's when he can make some serious noise in the conference. All right, guys, I'm going to give you a breather from me. Up next is former Oregon tight end George Reister. We will talk all things Pac-12 football with him coming up next.
You're watching Talkin' Ducks, built by Par Lumber.
All right, welcome back to Talkin' Ducks. It's time for Excellence on the Field, brought to you by Ferguson Wellman. I'm joined now by my special guest, an arch nemesis, George Reister, former Oregon and NFL tight end. George, I'm just amazed you came back for more abuse. Thank you so much.
What you mean, everybody? Man, listen, I read the reviews from that episode. Scorching you, bro. Scorching you. This is what the people want. This is what the people want.
You had a couple of moments, but I wouldn't say scorching, but that's okay. That's okay. It's all up. All right, let's jump right in. We got a lot of things to talk about with you since we have you on today. First things first, next week, signing day. Ducks have the number 10 ranked class on 24/7's composite rankings. Clearly, it looks pretty good on paper. What do you think so far of this class as it stands right now, if nothing else happens?
Well, it's just the sheer amount of energy and time spent on defense, right? Like they have spent a lot of time on the defensive line, linebacker groups, clearly. And if you look at the success that Georgia has had the last few years, and then prior to that, Alabama, the thing that they could do the most is get pressure with 4 and tackle people. like the way when you hit somebody, they don't fall forward for another yard or 2 yards. They go backwards. And truthfully, that allows your secondary to play much better because now you can keep 2 high safeties. You don't allow a lot of big plays over the top. And that's the way Georgia plays. And now they're in a situation where Oregon is trying to beef up on the defensive line, get elite pass rushers. And between the guys that are coming back next year and what they've added in the transfer portal and these freshmen, the future appears very bright.
Let's talk a little bit more about that front seven because that's been a problem the last couple seasons. Even with Kayvon, they weren't producing a ton of sacks or even pressure. Is this an area where you think that they've added enough, especially even with the transfer Jordan Burch, to increase the pressure enough to do the things you think they want to do on defense?
They have increased it. They have done like they've exhausted every option. Like there's no more that they could have done. They got Brandon Dorless back. They got Burch. They've added some elite talent in the freshman class. Like there's like aside from poaching guys from Georgia, there's not much more that they could have done. So they have addressed the issue. And the main thing is, and you talked about the issue on the defensive line in the previous years, like Kayvon was a menace. Like he did a good job of getting pressure himself, right? But when you have a whole four guys who can get pressure, and there's 2 parts to it. Like on first and second down, you have to have guys in there who can stop the run. And then when you notice some of the elite teams, third down, third and long, they're shuffling a couple different guys in, and those are the attackers. Those are the guys who are go hunt the quarterback and not let him escape the pocket. Because when you have elite quarterback play like you're going to have in the Pac-12 in 2023, like you're going to have to be able to have guys that can not just get pressure on Caleb Williams, but keep him from running around or make him make poor throws. And then when you look at the quarterbacks around the entire conference, you are going to have to get pressure if you want to win football games.
Yeah, a lot of times the sack isn't the big deal. It's the mentality it creates in the quarterback, because
Correct.
now he's more susceptible to just and throwing the ball up to the secondary to make plays.
Let me get the ball away, or either making poor throws and poor decisions, or just saying, oh my God, I got to get rid of it and throw the ball away and just waste a down.
Right. 100%.
Yeah. So, and it all goes back to the thing that the Ducks have not done well in the last couple of years, which is get off the field on third down. I mean, and because there's nothing more troubling. Like you felt better about the Ducks getting a stop when, aside from the Oregon State game, when it was 3rd and 3 and the other team was, or 3rd and 2 and the other team was going to run the football, you felt better about getting a stop than you did on 3rd and 11. And 3rd and 11 should be easier.
Right. Definitely. Okay. Any surprises? Any big names out there Oregon's in on they could flip or just reel in and make this class even better?
Oh, the name to watch is Nicholas Harbor. Nicholas Harbor is the name to watch. And Roderick Pleasant, the cornerback out of Sarah, because my son played against him this last year. That kid is fast, buddy. I mean, and he return kicks. When I say fast, I mean fast. But the cold part is he's fast, and he's not even Nicholas Harbor fast, which is the kid that's out of Texas. I remember when I first saw him, and I thought it was some BS times when I saw he ran like a 10.4 as a sophomore or junior, and he was like 215 pounds in high school, and he was a D end. I was like, bro, somebody is playing around with this clock. Ain't no way. And then he keeps doing it again, and now he's running 10.2. So he's talking about being a potential Olympian. And where else would you like to come? Because obviously Hayward Field and Oregon's track program are very storied. And so the Oregon coaches and the track coach met with him yesterday. So they are going full court press, because the dude, if he plays on offense, he like you would think he would be a tight end because of his size, but he would be more of like you're looking at a guy who could be DK Metcalf like, or just a crazy, insane version of even Kayvon Thibodeau in terms of speed, power, and athleticism coming off the defensive end.
All right, George, great stuff as always, but we're going to continue this conversation after the break on Talkin' Ducks.
You're watching Talkin' Ducks, built by Par Lumber.
Welcome back to Talkin' Ducks. It's time for our rock solid pick, brought to you by Milan Stoneworks. Is Oregon ever going to be able to amass the level of talent that Clemson has in the past, Georgia right now, Bama, LSU when they won a national title, to really contend against those types of programs? You looked at that game, like there was clearly a difference between Georgia and TCU, and at the beginning of the season, there was clearly a large gap between Georgia and Oregon. Can Oregon close that gap with recruiting, given the fact that you can't do that out of your own backyard? You have to go invade other people's areas.
Okay. I think it's important to keep the Oregon-Georgia game in a little bit of context, right? That if Oregon played Georgia at the end of the season, Georgia clearly wins that game. I don't think it's 49-3 though. That's the difference.
59-21. 59-21, right? 59-21?
49-21.
No, because if Oregon scores more, then Georgia's best players are going to stay on the field longer, and they're going to score more points because they called off the dog. So I disagree. But go ahead.
Yeah, but also I think that the Georgia, if they had played them in the middle of the season, that we're looking at probably a 49-21 game, because Georgia blew everybody's doors off. So that's not a diss. You know what I mean? Like they knocked everybody's doors off. But when you look at the talent that Oregon has, right? The thing that has been kind of the indicator of whether you are a national championship caliber team or not is the blue chip ranking. And that means that whether you have 50% or more of your roster that is 4- and 5-star players, and Oregon, and when Oregon continues to recruit how they have now, granted, there have been some times where kids have been ranked, and because whether it's the kids or whether it's the coaching or something like that, they have not played up to what their ranking is supposed to indicate. So that's where Lanning has seen it. He's done it, and you're hoping that now, whether it's between coaching the players up, because I don't always blame the players when they don't live up to all the hype. Sometimes it's coaching, sometimes it's scheme, sometimes it's situation that are all coupled into it. So I'm hoping that Dan Lanning, who's been there and done it and seen it at the highest level, national championship level, that he's able to identify the talent and what that looks like on the high school film to say, oh, like, I'm not worried about what this list says. Like, I don't care whether they're ranked 1 or whether they're ranked 1,000. If that kid got it, then that's who we take. And I think that there are, and I'm learning from my son's recruiting and knowing other kids that are being recruited and what I think about them and all of that stuff. I notice kids that are under recruited. Like, for instance, the kid that Oregon State just signed, the quarterback, Aiden Childs. I've seen him for a couple years in his maturation. Teams weren't really in on him at first. Oregon State was all in on him from the beginning. He commits to Oregon State. He was so committed to the coach, the coaching, and everything else. Notre Dame tried to flip him at the end, was like, no, we want you, blah, blah. And he was like, nah, bro, y'all, Johnny come latelys, Ohio State, all of y'all that are trying to offer, nah, I'm good. I'm going to the Beavs. And that's because sometimes coaches, they will see kids, because I've heard them say it. Like, I've heard them say it to my face, like, that there are certain kids that they like, and they're like, yeah, but he's not ranked. I don't know if I'm like, they don't trust their own eyes because they're looking at a sheet of paper and where a kid is ranked. Because of course the fans are going to respond to rankings. So and yes, stars do matter, because like a kid like Mateo Uiagalelei or Nicholas Harbor, like, their measurables are so freaking good that they have a better chance, like, that they start from a higher floor. So now they can get to the ceiling faster. And as opposed to having to develop kids. So I think that the coaching, to a roundabout answer, is just that the coaching has to identify talent regardless of the rankings and put a good product and a good team on the field and coach them up.
Okay, so again, can Oregon get that level of talent to compete at that level? Okay,
yeah,
the answer is yes.
And
they never have. They never have ever, but you think they will?
Correct. Well, okay. So going back to when I played, we would go to now. Oregon has put together getting some really good players, but not a ton of them, right?
Right.
And so
not all at once.
Yeah. And we've had a bunch of NFL players, bunch of 5 stars, bunch of high four stars that have materialized into everything everybody thought that they would be. The difference is what I said, is being able to accumulate a bunch of them. And now with Oregon's brand and what Willie Taggart did, which was good, to make everybody really believe that Oregon can recruit in the top 10 every single year. And if you're recruiting in the top 10 every single year, then you are going to have a chance over the long period of time. You are going to amass enough talent to be able to compete in those games.
Okay.
And now there is a difference though, right? Because Georgia is at an elite level. I mean, they are at a level that nobody else is at. So I'm not comparing them to Georgia, because Georgia had 15 guys drafted to the NFL, did not take one player out of the portal, lost players to the portal, and still was by far the best team in college football.
Exactly.
So, like, I take them out of the equation because they're on a run right now that can't be sustained. It just can't.
Okay. Well, my feeling on this is that I believe it when I see it. We saw Mario have a couple of top 10 classes, yet no quarterback, no running back, one receiver, and a defense that ranked in the 70s. And they just had 15 kids enter the transfer portal. Those kids didn't enter the transfer portal because they got beaten out by elite talent. It's because they got beaten out by guys, like I just said, 70th ranked defense, whatever it was, et cetera, et cetera. And they had to go out and get transfers to fill positions at quarterback and running back. So Mario's classes, I think, were inflated. And now we got to see if Lanning's classes can do what you just said.
Correct.
Be based in talent, not necessarily just rankings, because the rankings can be deceiving, as we saw with Utah, which had an average class rank of 44 in the 4 years leading up to winning back their second Pac-12 title in 2 seasons. So, so we'll see.
But with Utah, when they run into elite talent, like a roster like Ohio State, what happens?
Oh, of course.
As good as they are.
Right, exactly. But they still have won the conference twice in an era where Oregon had way better recruiting, classes ranked average of 11, whereas this class now is 10. So there's a gap there between the elite teams in the country and where Oregon has been recruiting.
Well,
clearly.
And coaching and stuff like that, coaching and development matters
Yeah,
because I've always said that if Kyle Whittingham, if he was able to get his hands on top 10 recruiting classes every year, bro, it would be a problem. It would be a problem, not just in the Pac-12, it'd be a problem everywhere.
All right, guys, great stuff as always. Duck fans, be sure to rejoin us next week. Jordan Kent will be back, and we will be doing a special recruiting show because signing day is coming up on Wednesday.